Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for the Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Sharon, who is an intermediate photographer from Canada. Sharon recently created this image on the Mindful Eye's Jekyll Island workshop. Jekyll Island is a barrier island off the coast of Georgia. It's a place where I've been teaching workshops for about 15 years. It's one of my favorite locations on the Georgia coast, and on this workshop we focus mainly on landscapes. We shoot some architecture, and this is one of my favorite locations on the island. It's a place called Driftwood Beach. We have almost all the metadata here, everything except for the shutter speed. So let me give you the information we do have. Canon EOS 40D is the camera. Effective focal length here of right at 45 millimeters, ISO 100, and f8. Let me say a couple of things about the technical or metadata. f8 on a lot of lenses is going to be close to a middle aperture, and in a scene like this where we don't have anything that's really very close to the camera, this is a great aperture choice. For a landscape shot where we may be trying to show a lot of sharpness, Sharon has a subject here, the silhouette of these downed trees and the surf have a lot of edge detail, so having the ability to express overall sharpness might be a really important part of making a print from this file. And just understanding the way that depth of field, so stopping down to smaller apertures and implying a greater range of focus, can sort of work against us because of something called diffraction. I'll put a link up to our diffraction video in the description for this video. If you're new to the Mindful Eye, you don't know much about diffraction, you might want to watch that video, and then you might think twice in the future about stopping down to the smallest apertures on your lens, like f16 or f22, to gain depth of field. This is, in my opinion, for this kind of shot where we don't have a foreground that's really close to the camera, really nice choice for aperture here. Another thing that I'll mention is we can sort of get in a rut when we're shooting scenic and only shoot wide or super wide, and Sharon is shooting an effective focal length here that's fairly close to normal, and that can be a great focal length for sort of coming in between the idea of magnifying and zooming in and just shooting a very small part of the landscape versus shooting super wide. Here Sharon is able to isolate a section of a huge area that has a lot of trees that are in the surf, so she's able to simplify, but a focal length that's just a little bit wider than normal will still give a sense of quite a bit of atmosphere around the main subject of the trees. And more than anything, what I'm really sort of trying to encourage you to do here is, if you feel like you're sort of stuck in a rut, shooting any given subject and you're going back to the same lenses over and over and over again, may be a really great exercise to pick one focal length. Even if you only have zooms, you could limit yourself to one focal length on a zoom. Pick a focal length that's different than where you've been shooting, and try to work that focal length for a while and give yourself a new way of seeing. There's really not anything that I want to change about this image. There are just several other things that I wanted to mention today that might help you as a landscape photographer. One of those things is dealing with severely clear days. You know, you can tell from this shot that at least in this section of the landscape in the sky, we didn't have many clouds, and that was true on this morning. And one of the things that you can do on days where it's predicted to be very clear is to get there very early. This is at a time of day called nautical twilight, and it's a time of day before you're going to start to get dramatic light on the clouds. On average, this is going to be anywhere from an hour before up to about 30 minutes before sunrise. In this case, this is about 45 minutes before sunrise, and during nautical twilight you can get very, very intense color gradients like Sharon has here. A lot stronger color in the background than you'll get later in the morning when you may have very dramatic color on the clouds. And so in other words, this color that we're seeing in the file is pretty close to the way this color would look if you were to just walk out onto the beach at this time of day and look due east or very close to due east, which is the direction Sharon is shooting here. So we could take advantage of this very powerful dramatic color gradient, and in these types of scenes a lot of times we don't need sky action to break this negative space up, because the space itself is expressing such a strong color gradient and a very dynamic color gradient, where we're going from a very, very warm color at the horizon and then to its complement as we move higher in the sky. So I just wanted to mention that idea of getting there early, particularly on clear days, and starting to shoot maybe a lot earlier than you're used to shooting. Starting to shoot an hour before the sun comes up and really taking advantage of the time during nautical twilight on clear days. This image has another thing working for it that I think can be really powerful. I talk a lot about the idea of repetition. To me, an extremely powerful way to work with the concept of repetition is to have one subject in the frame that sets up an idea. In this case, it's a quality of line and also a shape. And then to repeat that idea in a much smaller way. And that's what's happening here. So we have this really big section of a tree, very powerful shape, very powerful idea, and that plays out over and over again, but then a smaller moving out through here. And that can be a very dynamic way to express repetition or rhythm that can really help the viewer to move very far inside of the experience of viewing the photograph. Another thing that I talk about is the idea of being able to express rhythm in several different subjects. And it's really interesting here to see the idea of a really big idea, smaller ideas that are rhyming, but then similar qualities of line that Sharon has included down here in the beach that's nearer to the camera. And now we sort of have three areas or three different subject areas in the image that are expressing the same quality of line, same type of movement. The other thing that I wanted to mention here that I think is very powerful is just the idea of archetypes, finding subjects that are archetypal, finding subjects that can suggest archetypal ideas or that could become metaphors for the viewer. And one of the things that I love about this image is just this area right in here where these two branches in a very dynamic part of the image seem to be about to touch. So just the idea of touch is such a powerful archetypal concept for human beings. And this part of the photograph can become a subject area that's very important. And then another powerful design concept, or the last one I'm going to mention here, is the idea of opposites. You have a lot of very dynamic energy and lines that are moving, and over here it gets really dynamic. Very, very serious edge to these lines. And then you have this one line. It's just very simple. Small, very simple, and it's surrounded by quite a bit of negative space. So your mind's eye can really go to it. It's really beautiful how it breaks this line up in a dynamic way. You have a really strong sense of rhythm. You have this archetypal idea where these two branches are about to touch, and then you have this concept right here that breaks it up. The really nice thing about those other ideas that sort of break up the feeling of rhythm is they just make the scene more multi-dimensional. And to me, this is a really beautiful example of Sharon shooting on a morning where there are not a lot of clouds, letting go of the idea of it may be cliche to just shoot toward the color, framing in a way that moves a little bit away from the norm of thinking about shooting these scenes, which is shooting super wide. And in a very simple scene, picking this scene and including other ideas that start to layer this up. There's a real strong sense of unity and simplicity, but then you have these other ideas that come in and allow us to slow down when we see them and move further into the image. And so as a takeaway from the video today, just really encourage you to think about this type of rhythm that we talked about, large versus small, and also thinking about showing rhythm if you can in two or more subjects where you have three different things that might be expressing the same visual motif, and concept of opposites, and also the concept of visual archetypes. I want to say a big thank you to Sharon and all the people who participated in our Jekyll Island workshop, and I want to say a big thank you to you for being here on The Mindful Eye. I hope to see you again real soon.